everyone! Today I'm working on Utica's Gingham look from Drag Race for a friend of mine. I'll be making this for a made-to-move Barbie doll. I'll be using pink, yellow, and blue gingham. It's not turquoise, but I'm sure it'll give the right look overall. Let's get started. So Utica has a shimmer mesh under the elements on the top. I didn't notice it right away until I got a closer look. At the front, it's like a bib, and then there are parts to the sleeves that are sewn to the mesh bodysuit. In the close-up photos, I saw that the mesh has a bit of a shimmer to it as well. Shocking, I know. So I decided to use this fabric that has a shimmer and the nude color, and it's stretchy. So it's great to make the bodysuit from. It's also sturdy enough that I know I can sew all the elements to it and it will hold up really well. Here I have the bodysuit started. I've left it a little big so that I can manipulate it the way that I want. I can always take it in a little bit here or there. The lower part of her sleeve is slim to her arm. I'm actually going to attach that to this sleeve so that it's one piece before I construct the bodysuit. All the other elements, all the pleating and ruffles, I will be able to hand stitch on top. The main part of the bodysuit is constructed now. I'm going to be adding the puffy piece above the gingham that is already on the sleeve, and then the two sets of pleating, so the one that's above the puffy part and the one around her shoulder. So for the puffy part, I've made the two tubes that I'm going to use. I'll be gathering them and then stitching them to the sleeve. I'll quickly show you what I mean here. So I'm going to gather the top and then the bottom, so it'll give that puff look that will lay under the pleated section. My little trick to sewing items onto the sleeves and making sure it still fits on the doll is using the different size pens and markers. So for this sleeve, I'm using a good old classic Sharpie marker. For Monster High dolls, I tend to use pencils or skinny pens. So I basically put the pens or markers into the sleeve and I can stitch what I want to it. It gives me something sturdy to stitch to, and like I said, it makes sure that I don't tighten the sleeve too much. And here's the sleeve with the puffy part attached. I just wanted it to drape down a little like Utica's outfit, but I didn't want it too thick, so it'd be hard to layer the pleats over top. So it's not super full. Now I have to do the pleats around the elbow and the other section of pleats that go around her shoulders. I've taken little rectangles of fabric and I've hemmed both sides as I want both of the edges to be finished. I'll pleat them with the small pleats and iron them down. I'm sewing the pleats down with a longer edge on one side and a shorter edge on the other. I'm trimming this with pink ribbon and then hand stitching it to the sleeve. Now, I know you guys have been yelling at me probably this entire time. I realized after I attached all the elements on both sleeves that I did one side in the wrong color. I was going to do a bit of a rewind on the video, pretend it didn't happen, but I guess this goes to show you we all make mistakes. Now for the bib. It looks a little heart-shaped to me, larger on the top, skinnier portion near her waist. So I used a little piece of paper to get an idea on the size that I needed to cut. I actually cut two sets of each because it's easier to get a curve when you do a lining versus trying to fold a tiny little hem over in a circular pattern. It's never going to look quite the same. I have them attached now and the size and shape that I want. So it's time to add the blue and yellow ruffles to the edges. Then I will make and attach the straps that go over her shoulders. I have to attach the bib to the bodice. I like to do things like this when they're on the doll. That way I can make sure it is positioned where I want it, especially if I'm working with stretch fabrics. Things can shift and move more than you realize, and it's nice to know you're sewing it where you want it to go. I'm adding the pink ribbon detailing. Ribbon is tricky to get to go around curves, so the skinnier the ribbon that you use, the easier that it is, and hand stitching gives you far more control. I'm adding the pleated ruffle to the shoulder now. It's pretty much the same as the other pleated section that I did. I'm just wrapping it around her arm and stitching it to the bodysuit. As you can see, I've already attached the collar as well. I've made the straps out of the yellow and blue gingham. I 3D printed myself some buckles that will go on the straps in a baby pink color. It was the closest color that I had. I will just tack these straps in place quickly so that I know they're sitting where I want them. And then I'm going to stitch them down better once I take the bodysuit off the doll again, and then I'm going to add the bling later. Here's the bodysuit with most of the details. So you can see the collar, and I've added the bow. I'm going to add some blingy pieces at the bow and on the straps. I'm just not sure what yet. I've also added the tiny pleated details on the lower part. For these, it was too hard to sew hems onto them because they're so tiny. So what I did was cover the pieces fully in fray stop. Now I want to start on the skirt. I have to attach a piece of yellow to the blue, making sure when you open them that they're on the right sides, if that makes sense. Gingham is a very light cotton, so I'm trying to stitch it down a little bit more than usual in some spots as well. I have the basic shape that I want, but I will be tweaking it. I have to add closures and the pleating and the ruffles. I've layered the pink and yellow on one side and blue and pink on the other side. They will actually start as pleats higher up on the skirt and then turn into more of a ruffle. So I'll be pleating them first and then doing the gathering from there and attaching to the hem. I will be ironing everything down after as well to make sure the ruffles lay a little nicer. So far so good though, they're just looking a little crazy. The other thing that I noticed was a little pair of bloomers with pleats peeking out from under her skirt. So I've made these and added the pleated detail. I've made a channel for some elastic to go through so that the waist can be stretchy and it's going to give that gathered look. So what I do is take a small safety pin and put it through near the end of the elastic. You don't want to go too close to the end because it might tear through the elastic. Ask me how I know. But the safety pin gives you something to hold on to while you push the elastic through the channel. You also want to stitch your elastic in place or pin really well so it doesn't come back out on you before you have a chance to construct the shorts. Again, ask me how I know. I found these cute little beads that have a shimmer in them in a light blue color. I thought they would work for the straps and the accent at the bow. The biggest challenge making doll clothes is finding tiny items that have a similar look to what you're going for. These by no means are what Utica has on her outfit, but they have this shape that I'm going for, colors that match, and some shimmer. For Utica's outfit, she has 3 hats on her head. So I found a basic hat print from my 3D printer, and I adjusted the size to what I needed, and I made 3 of them. I'm going to be covering them in the gingham, 2 blue, 1 yellow. I had to make the brims smaller, so since they were thin enough, I was able to actually cut them. I'm cutting out the circles from the gingham fabric larger than what I need so I can wrap it around. I'm making a hole in the center of this piece so it can go around the brim. I'm going to make it slightly smaller than I think because I already know I'm probably going to adjust it, and I don't want to cut it too big to begin with. And it will stretch a little bit, so it gives you a little bit of leeway to make sure you don't make it too large from the get-go. Then I need to cut out a circle large enough for the top. Again, bigger than I need so I can wrap it around the edges. Then I will be making another rectangle hemmed on both sides to wrap around the hat band and adding the ribbon on top. A lot of times I sew hats, but the gingham is so thin that I didn't want to take a chance creating the hats myself. I thought it was going to be far too finicky. I changed out the ribbon on the yellow hat after I did this one. It wasn't quite blue enough, and that's another challenge of doll scale, is finding supplies and matching colors. We do the best we can with what we can get our hands on. I've added felt onto the bottom of the hats as well. This is for 2 reasons. So it gives the bottom of the hat a cleaner look because I added the fabric wrapped around, and it's going to give it some thickness because I want to add ribbon trim around the brim, and currently it's not thick enough to glue to.